this? Born green? Huh. I can't take it anymore. My stomach hurts. From this. It's not hard to see that this stone giant must have a pretty good life. How to describe it? Just talk. Honestly, the entire process had me pumped up, but I never expected to be completely caught off guard by this guy. It can't be blamed on our giant baby. We can only blame the designer for being too ridiculous. Who would have thought that such a fierce beast could look so adorable? The tuft of green on the stone giant's head led to endless teasing in the livestream. However, in the game world, these native NPCs had no concept of a green tuft on their heads. This group of people stared wide-eyed at the stone giant, which was about to occupy half the area. Mountain giants like this, aside from what is recorded in ancient texts, no one has ever seen in person. And for these witnesses, only one word remained in their hearts. Huge. Really huge. At this moment, even Liao couldn't help but curse. While in shock, he started to feel frustrated. Compared to the stone giant, his proud artillery piece looked like a large toothpick. How could they compare? How could they play? Just the giant's size alone made it seem like any attack would leave it unscathed. However, it was impossible to make him easily concede. As a master architect, his skills were certainly not limited to just this artillery piece. If it came to life and death, with Carrie's strength, Liao could defeat the opponent within a minute. But this was not a life and death situation. Some powerful things couldn't be demonstrated here. Uncle Li, even Carrie himself took a while to recover from the shock. Turning to glance at Liao, whose expression was slightly unpleasant, and apologized. I'm sorry, I didn't expect it to be this big. Hearing Carrie's words, Liao felt as if he was being mocked. His already unattractive face instantly darkened as he said in a deep voice, "Do you think this old man is not as good as your stone giant?" Hearing this, Carrie immediately realized that his words had displeased the other party. He wanted to explain, but unexpectedly, Liao's gloomy voice rang out again. "Young man, don't think that just because you have a stone figure, you can do whatever you want." Without giving Carrie a chance to speak, Liao reached into his toolkit. In the next moment, he took out 2 cubic devices and began to strike them quickly in front of everyone. The crowd looked on in surprise, not expecting that the situation would continue like this. As Liao struck, a thin wooden wall covered in black iron spikes rose up on the field. Seeing this, the sword and shield warrior couldn't help but exclaim, "Uncle Li, what do you intend to do? You're actually raising a thorn wall." To be a professional mentor, one must either have master-level strength or exceptional skills. While there was no direct involvement among the various professions, they were still quite knowledgeable about each other. At this moment, someone noticed something unusual and, staring wide-eyed at the thorn wall created by Liao, exclaimed, "How is this possible? This guy's thorn wall is not an ordinary thorn wall." The sword and shield warrior, hearing this, looked at the thorn wall in confusion, then turned to the elder who spoke and asked, "Master Ken, is there something wrong with Uncle Li's thorn wall?" "Absolutely." At this time, the red-haired uncle reappeared in everyone's line of sight, staring at Liao's thorn wall with a serious expression. It is well known that the summons created by architects have a clear level classification, ranging from level 1 to level 9. Everyone knew that a level 9 structure was the most powerful summon level an architect could achieve. As he spoke, the red-haired man looked at the thorn wall with an even more serious expression and whispered, "But that thorn wall belongs to a level 12 summon. I've only seen something like that once in my life." As he spoke, he shifted his gaze to the small black hammer in Liao's hand. "I never expected that thing would end up in his hands." It seems that the news from back then was true. The red-haired man's explanation made the sword and shield warrior understand immediately, and he became curious about the other thing the former mentioned. However, no matter how much he asked, the red-haired man remained tight-lipped. A level 12 structure? Carrie, who was nearby, felt his expression turn serious upon hearing the red-haired man's words. Others might have some understanding of the summoning profession, but that was merely superficial knowledge. As a giant summoner, his understanding of his profession far exceeded anyone else's. It was precisely because of this understanding that he felt so grave. Although there was only a 3-level difference between level 9 and level 12, those 3 levels were likely unattainable for anyone in their lifetime. Moreover, these 3 levels represented the transformation of summons. The world knows that level 9 summons are powerful, but what they don't know is that in the face of level 12, level 9 summons are as fragile as children. Taking the artillery platform in front of him as a comparison, although both are artillery platforms, to destroy a level 12 platform, it would likely require 3 to 5 level 9 platforms in a direct confrontation. It may seem insignificant, but the financial cost involved is something that an average person cannot bear. Fortunately, the conflict with Liao is not a real battle. Otherwise, just the loss of his Earth core would be enough to trouble him for a lifetime. However, at this moment, he cannot give up the thought of competition. "Thankfully, I have it," Carrie muttered to himself, his right hand unconsciously stroking the silver pendant hanging on his chest. This pendant, while it cannot allow his summoned creature to surpass Liao, does inherently increase its level by 2, which should prevent his mountain giant from losing too embarrassingly. In fact, with the mountain giant's naturally strong defense, defeating the opponent is not out of the question. Chapter 315, Fame and Architect Bang. With a violent sound, the area behind the professional hall shook as if an earthquake had struck. The shockwave generated by the terrifying impact sent dust and debris flying across the space. However, despite the seemingly horrific punch that even cracked the ground, the thorn wall summoned by Li Ao still stood firm in front of the stone giant. Given the height of the thorn wall, the stone giant could easily step over it. Yet, the stone giant did not do so. Seeing that its blow had failed to destroy the obstructive barrier, it raised its fists and roared in anger. As it vented its fury, the giant stone fists came crashing down on the thorn wall once more. Boom. Bang. With another terrifying impact, dirt and stones were sent flying, accompanied by the roar of the stone giant. Mixed within that furious roar was a hint of pain. What the heck? What is that old man's defense wall made of? Seriously, this is just absurd. That huge guy couldn't he break it even with 2 punches? Not that it wasn't he damaged, it's just a bit. Look at those black thorns on top, they're already bent. What? Is it bent? If you're so capable, stand there and let that big fool try to smash it. Are you stupid? Even if the 4 great guardians stood there, that punch would likely leave them regretting it. Who are the 4 great guardians? In stark contrast to the lively live broadcast, the surroundings of the arena had fallen into an eerie silence. Several class transition instructors stared intently, some even in disbelief, at the still-standing thorn wall. Despite taking 2 heavy hits from the stone giant, the thorn wall, made entirely of wood and iron thorns, remained as solid as a city wall. Even though the black thorns on top had dulled and bent, the wooden frame supporting the iron thorns was still intact. One could say that the sturdiness of this thorn wall had surpassed their understanding. Even the red-haired, scar-faced man stared wide-eyed. After a long moment, he began to mutter to himself, "The Black God Tree, it cannot be wrong. That guy used the Black God Tree." The red-haired, scar-faced man repeated this to himself, while the sword and shield youth beside him felt puzzled. What is the Black God Tree? It is a giant tree that grows at the peak of Mount Pespella. According to legend, that tree. This time, the red-haired, scar-faced man did not hold back, slowly sharing what he knew about the Black God Tree. After listening to his account, the sword and shield youth stared in disbelief. Although he still did not fully understand how powerful the Black God Tree was, he had heard the name of Mount Pespella. It was said to be the pinnacle of the world. A tree growing at the world's peak should not be an ordinary tree. The current sturdiness of the thorn wall was enough to prove the extraordinary nature of this divine tree. The Black God Tree is known to be the strongest and hardest tree in the world. However, it is still wood. And after enduring 2 heavy hits from the stone giant, it began to show signs of strain. Buzz. As the stone giant delivered its 3rd mighty strike, the impressive thorn wall finally began to crack under the unbearable weight with a series of sharp sounds. A fierce wind and dust swirled around, culminating in a thunderous collapse. As the thorn wall shattered, splinters of wood and dark iron thorns flew everywhere, and nearly half of the giant's massive stone fists also fractured. The stone giant roared again, its voice filled with anger and frustration. Unlike the lifeless thorn wall, the stone giant, although not highly intelligent, was a creature with thoughts. Even with an intellect comparable to that of a small child, it could still be considered an emotional being. After 3 strikes to destroy the thorn wall, and having sustained injuries itself, the stone giant instinctively felt a surge of anger. In its fury, the giant turned its attention to the artillery positions behind the crumbling thorn wall. Seeing the towering gun emplacements, it pounded its chest and roared in rage, stepping forward with the intent to crush the structures before it. Boom, boom, boom. However, before the stone giant could approach, the standing artillery opened fire first. Accompanied by a deafening sound, brilliant flames shot out from the dragon-like gun muzzles, resembling the breath of a dragon at first glance. Among the dazzling flames, black projectiles were launched, and before anyone could react, explosive sounds erupted. Compared to the earlier impact from the stone giant's attacks on the thorn wall, the force of the explosions from the artillery was terrifying. The scorching shockwaves carried fragments of stone shed from the giant, scattering like bullets. Witnessing this, everyone instinctively prepared to defend themselves. At that moment, a shadow appeared in front of them, clinking as it shielded them from the flying debris. As the swirling dust settled, they finally saw that it was the steel warrior standing before them. Only then did they understand why Carrie had summoned it in advance. With the protection of the steel warrior, they felt emboldened to look toward the training ground. Gasp! When they saw the horrific scene unfolding, they couldn't help but take a sharp breath. Terrifying, brutal. In that moment, those 2 adjectives were all that came to their minds. All the NPCs were left speechless by the shock. Meanwhile, Lu Dowda stood there, dumbfounded and unable to speak, even feeling as if his breathing was becoming labored. In his live broadcast room, the atmosphere had already erupted. Hundreds of thousands of viewers were utterly stunned by the strikingly realistic scene before them. Lacking the vocabulary, All they could exclaim was, "What the heck? This is incredible. Not just incredible, from now on, summoning is my faith. Oh my goodness. Can someone tell me? Is that a homemade cannon? If we had something like this back in the day, would we have been bullied by those 8 invaders? If we had this, the world would have condemned us for possessing weapons of mass destruction. To be honest, this is almost on par with modern weaponry. It's really hard to believe that it's just a homemade cannon." At this moment, the shock that netizens felt towards the stone giant was completely overshadowed by the terrifying power of the artillery in front of them. They realized that the physics knowledge they had learned was entirely useless in the face of this dragon head-shaped earth cannon. No matter how hard they tried to think, they couldn't fathom why this simple earth cannon possessed destructive power akin to that of a missile. It can be said that this shot by Li Ao made netizens remember the profession of architect. This profession, although bearing the most ordinary name, holds the terrifying ability to shake everything. In an instant, the profession of architect became the most sought-after career online. Of course, not everyone on the internet favored summoning. There were also pure believers who strongly supported warriors and gunslingers. The most overlooked profession was that represented by the beautiful woman in the wheelchair, the doll summoner. It wasn't until a female streamer chose this profession that players began to realize the terrifying potential of this role. Chapter 316. The fruit stand owner. As the strategy spread online, many players found NPCs suspected of distributing flyers in their respective areas. With a sense of curiosity, players approached to inquire, and when they received the flyers and saw the posters, they couldn't help but tremble with excitement. Looking at the architectural style in the background of the flyer, they were certain they had found the right place. Players who received the prerequisite tasks immediately rushed towards their destination, eager and without hesitation. While longing for that world, they also found themselves drawn to the character prominently featured on the poster. No, to be more precise, it was the weapon that person held. Although the image on the poster was static, everyone could see that it was a gigantic sword shimmering with lightning. Its cool appearance, akin to that of a divine artifact, instantly attracted countless players' admiration and desire. At the same time, they understood that in order to wield this weapon, they would need to change their class to a warrior. At that moment, countless players across the internet decided to switch to the warrior class, not for faith, but solely for the weapon. Dear adventurer, the continent of Otan is facing an unprecedented crisis. Governor Fu Minghan calls on adventurers to unite against the invasion from the Empire. Have you decided to head to Otan? When players arrived at their respective task locations, a prompt box appeared before them. Forget about resisting the invasion from other empires. Even if it were a local hell, players wouldn't care at this moment. All players unanimously made a choice. As they completed their selections, beams of light descended from the sky, instantly enveloping these players. The dazzling brilliance made everyone instinctively close their eyes. Just a breath later, they heard the sound of a gentle breeze rustling through green grass. When they instinctively opened their eyes, they found themselves no longer in the mechanical city. Looking around, they saw green hills and grass, with a gentle breeze brushing against their faces. The entire scene was instantly refreshing. "Otan, this is Otan." At this moment, someone in the crowd shouted. Hearing the shout, players turned to see where it came from. Before them stood a Gothic-style city that seemed to belong to the 16th century, capable of accommodating millions of people. Especially the striking, sharp tower at the center of the city, exuding a strong artistic vibe. This was simply a work of art. Indeed, while the style was very close to Gothic, with even some Baroque elements, it looked more like a piece of art than a mere building. Haha, I wonder if it's just my imagination, but seeing that tower, I feel like I've spotted the statue of the old thief from the city of Duoyen. Wow, don't say, it really has that vibe. Seriously, can we not ruin the mood? How could such a noble thing be associated with that old thief? Upon hearing that netizens' words, those around couldn't help but recall the statue in the city of Duoyen. The thought of the old thief being worshipped as a deity by those giants made everyone feel extremely disgusted. However, it cannot be denied that at this moment, everyone felt that this tall tower was likely related to Lin Fei. But right now, no one was in the mood to study the tower. Their minds were filled with thoughts about job changes or what profession they had already decided to switch to. This group of players with clear objectives determined the direction toward Aoduan City and quickly headed there without any delay. Fortunately, it was not far, and in just a short while, they arrived at the west gate of Aoduan City. At this time, the city guards were already lined up in front of the gate, seemingly aware of their arrival in advance. The city guards, with a clear command, stated that there were people lining up for registration. Although the players were eager, they still followed the arrangements and obediently registered at the city gate. The registration process was simple, just writing down their names, ages, and genders. Once registered, the players could no longer hold back and inquired about the location of the job change hall before rushing off in a swarm. A large group of adventurers flooded in, instantly bringing life to the previously quiet Aoduan City. Some indigenous people, seeing a business opportunity, set up stalls selling goods in various neighborhoods. However, Due to a lack of labor, they only sold fruits and fruit wines. The players shook their heads repeatedly, feeling that it was too monotonous. Boss, how much for this fruit? Maya, originally a food broadcaster, had changed her career to become a game streamer due to health reasons. Although she had switched careers, her curiosity about novel foods made her instinctively stop. The fruit stall owner, who hadn't seen anyone inquire for a long time, perked up upon hearing her. Little girl, these fruits are picked by me. They are so sweet. The stall owner, looking at the chubby Maya, immediately picked up a bright red fruit resembling an apple and handed it to her, saying, "You can try it first. If it's not sweet, you don't have to pay." Hee, that's not necessary. Maya instinctively waved her hand. I believe you. This fruit looks delicious. The fruit stall owner laughed and said, "You're quite the charmer, little girl. Since you're my first customer, I'll give you half price. 2 for 1 copper coin. 2 fruits for 1 copper coin." Maya was taken aback, not because she thought the fruit was expensive, but she didn't expect this kind of trading method. Selling fruits by the piece? That was quite rare. At the same time, she became curious about the copper coins the stall owner mentioned. She realized that she didn't have the currency of this world on her, and for a moment, she felt a bit troubled. However, she quickly thought of something and looked up at the fruit stall owner. The woman appeared to be in her 30s to 40s, not exceptionally beautiful, but exuding a charm of a mature woman. Seeing this, Maya decisively took off a decorative ring from her left hand and said, "That big sister, how about this? Can I trade you this ring for 2 fruits? Huh?" Seeing Maya's actions, the fruit stall owner was clearly taken aback. After a moment of surprise, she hurriedly waved her hand, saying, No, that's too expensive." Although she didn't know the value of the ring, she realized from the gemstones it was set with that it was likely quite valuable. "Don't worry, this ring isn't worth much." Maya's response immediately increased the owner's regard for her. The ring was simply something she exchanged for 10 points in the mechanical city. So she wasn't lying. As a woman, how could one resist the allure of jewelry? Especially this ring, which was truly beautiful. After hesitating for a moment, the fruit stall owner suddenly asked, "Are you also an adventurer planning to go to the professional hall?" Taken aback by the unexpected question, Maya quickly replied without any concealment. "Yeah, I'm here to change my profession." Hearing her confirmation, the conflicted expression on the owner's face finally relaxed, and she leaned in closer to whisper, "If you want to change your profession, I can recommend you to find that girl Lena." Lena? Upon hearing the name, Maya secretly noted it down in her mind and smiled. "Thank you, sister." While speaking, she placed the ring on the fruit stall and picked up 2 pieces of fruit. Ready to leave. Just a few steps out, she heard the owner's voice behind her. "If you have any difficulties in the future, you can come find me. The fruit is free for you." Maya didn't turn around but raised her arm and waved, saying, "Thank you, sister." After that, she took a bite of the bright red fruit in her hand. Ugh! In the next moment, her entire face scrunched up. So sour. Chapter 317. This streamer is all about the action streamer. I think this fruit should be peeled before eating. Looking at Maya's chubby little face, scrunched up like a dumpling, the attentive viewers in the live chat couldn't help but remind her. Hearing the reminders, Maya finally noticed the fruit she hadn't thrown away. There was a very obvious mark between the bright red skin and the flesh, indicating that this fruit really needed peeling. In this amusing mix-up, Maya didn't feel embarrassed at all. Suppressing the sourness in her mouth, she smiled and said, "Hee, actually I noticed it long ago. I just wanted to liven up the atmosphere." However, the viewers in the chat were not buying it at all. "Blowing your own horn, huh? Haha, I admire your shamelessness." That's right. The streamer is the only serious female streamer who boasts like this on the entire internet. Even the likes of Sister Luo would feel inferior after watching her. It's a fact that those who can become streamers usually have some skills. Just like Maya, who used to do eating broadcasts where others pretended to eat and made a fortune, while she actually ate. She earned money, but barely enough to cover her medical expenses. Reluctantly, she exited the eating broadcast industry and turned her attention to the currently hottest gaming section. As a complete novice in gaming, she initially thought her streaming career would be filled with obstacles, yet to her surprise, the audience loved her confused look while pretending to understand everything. So delicious. Peeling off the bright red skin, Maya took another bite, and her eyes squinted with delight. Wow, it's soft, sweet, and has a subtle fragrance. Maya swore she had never eaten such delicious fruit in her life, nor did she expect such a delicacy could be found at a roadside stall. Her blissful expression was seen by the audience, but no one was buying it. "I say, streamer, can you stop switching topics all the time?" "Exactly. You need to remember, you're no longer in eating broadcasts. Isn't it better to focus on gaming?" "Ugh, it's really a headache. You say you're bad at gaming, but you don't even listen to instructions. This kid is hopeless." Facing the barrage of comments from viewers, Maya maximized her thick skin. Despite being a girl with a somewhat naive and sweet quality, she was actually a foodie hated by her fans, and for that reason, she faced a lot of criticism. Over time, Maya got used to this streaming rhythm. While others streamed to solve mysteries, go on adventures, or create guides for their fans, she did the complete opposite. Following her fans' requests and with guidance from them, this scatterbrained Maya finally found the profession hall. However, the area in front of the profession hall was already crowded with people, and there were city guards maintaining order in the square. Seeing this scene, the viewers in the chat immediately started complaining. Look at this. I told you to hurry up, but you insisted on dragging it out. Now look, with so many people, when will we get in? I know, right? I'm starting to envy those games where models can overlap. That kind of overlap is just trash. This is what real feeling is. Facing the debates from the viewers in the live stream, Maya did not express any opinion, her big, round eyes carefully observing the small square. After a while, as if she thought of something, she immediately walked towards the guards maintaining order. Stop! Before she could get close to a few guards, one of them, resembling a small leader, shouted to her. Upon hearing this, Maya stopped in her tracks, her chubby little face breaking into a smile as she said, "Hey there, could you make an exception? Make an exception?" The guard leader stared at the grinning Maya, showing no sign of friendliness, nor did he get too angry. He simply said in a harsh tone, "Can't you see everyone is in line?" Despite the guard's attitude, Maya maintained her cheerful demeanor, unfazed as she replied, "I see. But my purpose for coming here is different from theirs." Different purpose? Upon hearing Maya's words, the guard leader looked puzzled. Noticing his reaction, Maya quickly took out the remaining fruit that she hadn't eaten. "It's like this. I was strolling on the street, and the lady selling fruit said her niece works in the professional hall and asked me to pass on a message. Here, this fruit is the reward. Grandma?" Looking at the fruit in Maya's hand, the guard leader instantly recognized it. This type of fruit was only sold by one person in the entire city. And the only person who worked in the professional hall and had a good relationship with Grandma was a woman named Lena who used a wheelchair. Although the guard leader was unclear about the relationship between Grandma and Lena, he knew they were on good terms and often seen together. Since there was Grandma's fruit and he knew Lena was in the professional hall, it seemed likely that this was a request from Grandma. The guard leader didn't think too much and after a brief consideration, stepped aside. "Once you go in, don't wander around. Ask the staff, they will tell you Lena's location." Upon hearing this, Maya immediately thanked him and walked into the professional hall without hesitation. Her move left the viewers in the live stream stunned. Wow. The host's operation is amazing. Not just amazing, it's downright reckless. I think the host is trying to end her gaming career early. Yeah, I advise the host to do this kind of thing less often. Do you really not know the game's rules? The host's action was similar to that guy pretending to be an NPC to scam people a few days ago. But the host is lucky. While that guy ended up permanently banned. That's why they say, fools have their blessings. However, I think it's better to do less of this kind of thing. Seeing the comments, Maya couldn't help but feel a bit scared. She didn't expect that the game's rules would be so strict. To her, she hadn't done anything wrong, just borrowed the name of an NPC. So does this mean I'm quite lucky? The deed was done, and regretting it was pointless. So she decided to feel at ease again. Wow, so beautiful. I now feel that those who travel abroad are foolish. The architecture and decor here are not inferior to those famous landmarks overseas. As soon as Maya stepped into the transition hall, her attention was drawn to the vintage murals. Although she couldn't understand or even comprehend them, those battle-like murals seemed to open up a grand world before her eyes. The sounds of fierce battles echoed in her mind. Walking through the corridor that resembled a history museum made it hard to resist immersing herself in this foreign history. Wow, this must be the warrior profession, right? So awesome. Just as Maya was lost in the world of the murals, a gasp caught her attention. Coming back to her senses, she immediately walked over to the player and instinctively glanced at the wall. So cool. Chapter 318, come on. Show it. On the wall, in front of a clearly ruined door that appears to be a relic, stands a young man clad in exquisite armor. His long hair flows dramatically as he grips a colossal sword with both hands, surrounded by swirling energy. Behind him, a vaguely visible massive silhouette mirrors his movements, wielding a giant sword in a sweeping posture. Surrounding the young man and the gigantic phantom are a group of red monsters that are neither fully human nor fully ghostly. Each one has sharp teeth and fangs, resembling demons that crawled out of hell. The warriors in the mural and the red demons are equally captivating. But what draws the most attention is the enormous creature behind those monsters. Or rather, it is a gigantic treasure chest with limbs. At that moment, everyone carefully scrutinized this exaggeratedly shaped monster. Some even speculated, do you think the boss in this mural is the same as the one that drops the weapon shown on the poster? Upon hearing this player's speculation, everyone couldn't help but think of the thunderous giant sword held by the central NPC on the poster. Instantly, excitement surged among the crowd once again. Currently, 70% of the players entering this realm are fantasizing about that weapon. After all, who could resist such an impressive weapon? Everyone. The creature in this mural is called the Treasure Demon. It has disappeared from the world ever since the Ketra ruins were closed. As for the weapon you mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, it should be the King of Expansion. Just as the discussion was ongoing, a slightly aged voice echoed in the corridor. Everyone instinctively turned to look and saw an old man, leaning on a cane and hunched over, slowly approaching while speaking. I am Glenn. If you all want to learn about these murals, there will be time in the future, so don't keep the masters waiting. Upon hearing Glenn's words, the crowd finally reacted, quickly regaining their composure and hurriedly walked towards the hall. Seeing others leave, Maya's eyes twinkled as she approached Glenn and cheerfully asked, "Excuse me, do you know where Lena is? Grandma asked me to bring her a message." Grandma? Glenn's body trembled slightly at the mention of this name, and no one noticed the fleeting glimmer in his murky eyes. After a moment, he replied, "That little girl seems to be alone in the backyard. Not sure what has affected her." After getting Lena's location from Glenn and casually asking how to get to the backyard, Maya hurried off without hesitation. To her, the choice of profession was not important. What mattered was making things easier for herself. With this connection to Grandma, even if it was uncertain, there is an old saying, it's easier to get things done with someone on the inside. Even if this connection was just newly established, she felt it was better than approaching an unfamiliar mentor on her own. Grandma, what a long-forgotten name. As Maya watched the departing figure of green, she muttered a few words under her breath and glanced at the mural remnants on the wall before shakily leaving with her cane. Soon, Maya arrived at the backyard of the profession hall, where a scene of chaos greeted her eyes. The entire yard looked as if it had been plowed and harrowed. There was still a faint lingering smell of gunpowder in the air. At the edge of this disarray, a beautiful girl in a purple long dress sat in a wheelchair, lost in thought. Noticing that there was no one else around, Maya hesitated for a moment before approaching. "Lynn, Mentor Lena?" The sudden voice snapped the girl back to reality. She turned her wheelchair, and upon seeing the unfamiliar Maya, instinctively frowned, noting the displeasure on her face. Maya confirmed her identity and immediately put on a smile. "I was sent by Sister Grandma. She asked me to learn from you." Throughout this journey, Maya had become increasingly adept at leveraging Grandma's name. Even when facing Lena, she felt no embarrassment at all. As she had anticipated, Grandma's name proved to be effective. When Lena heard Grandma's name, her displeasure instantly vanished, and she asked Maya, "How is Aunt Grandma? I haven't seen her for several days." "Haha, Sister Grandma is doing well. She can eat, run, and even asked me to bring you a fruit." Maya skillfully navigated the social intricacies, pulling the only fruit from her pocket and handing it to Lena. At that moment, she silently congratulated herself for not succumbing to temptation and eating it. Seeing the fruit Maya offered, Lena completely believed her words, and a genuine smile finally appeared on her previously cool face. "Hee, it seems Aunt Grandma is really doing well. She even had time to pick fire tongue fruit." Fire tongue fruit. Is that what it is? Only then did Maya learn the name of the fruit in front of her. It was a special fruit that grew in the valley west of Otan, and only Grandma could gather it in the entire city of Otan. After a brief introduction, Lena suddenly shifted the topic. "Are you really planning to become a puppet master?" Puppet master? Maya, who didn't fully understand everything, was momentarily stunned and then asked in surprise, "Sister, can puppets really be a profession?" Wow. The viewers in the live stream were astonished by her boldness. They exclaimed that no one could rival her audacity. At this moment, they realized that this streamer had a level of boldness that was comparable to a city wall. Lena was also taken aback by the seemingly cute, chubby girl in front of her, who was so familiar and forward. This made her feel somewhat uncomfortable. However, considering that the girl was introduced by Aunt Grandma, she endured her discomfort and briefly explained some things about being a puppet master. However, as she continued to explain, her expression gradually turned cold again. It wasn't that she disliked the chubby girl in front of her, it was just, how could there be such a naive person in the world? The other party was just chatting away, looking quite clever, but when it came to the job introduction, they had a completely blank expression. It was simply a rare phenomenon. Nevertheless, despite her displeasure, Lena patiently finished the introduction. However, the other person's bewildered look was genuinely frustrating. With no other option, Lena sighed and glanced at the messy venue, saying, "It seems you didn't understand. Forget it. I'll demonstrate for you. Having connections makes it easier to secure a position." This statement couldn't be more accurate. Without the renowned title, Maya would probably have been kicked out by Lena long ago. How could she still be patient enough to demonstrate puppet mastery for her? Sitting in her wheelchair, Lena unapologetically took out a black object resembling a cross from her pocket. In an instant, someone in the live stream recognized the object. Is that a control device for puppets? Can it also be used as a combat tool? Before the viewers could ask more questions, Lena in the wheelchair had already started her demonstration. Chapter 319, Puppet Master. One-person army. Wow. So this is what a master looks like. I can't believe it. This is just too brutal. Haha, what giant creature summoning, what warriors. Compared to this beauty, they are simply weak. The viewers holding their phones to watch the live stream were all stunned at this moment. No matter how hard they tried to figure it out, they never expected that the one hidden deepest in the professional hall was actually this girl in a wheelchair in the video. Looking at the various types of puppets floating above the ground and the destruction just caused, they were completely shocked by the seemingly unassuming beauty in the wheelchair. What is this? One-person army? Clearly, it would take several professional combinations to form a team, yet this beauty accomplished it all alone. Swords, shields, polearms, great swords, dual guns. Item-wielding witch. As they watched the more than 10 puppets of various professions surrounding the wheelchair beauty, everyone revealed expressions of envy and longing. In the midst of it all, Maya had already lost her ability to think. Her mind was filled with the scenes of destruction created by those many puppets. So fierce. So ruthless. This is the profession that suits her. Just summon the puppets when there's a need. No need to lift a finger herself. It's simply tailor-made for her. Thinking of this, Maya could no longer contain herself and excitedly said, "Teacher Lena, I want to be a puppet master." Perhaps it was because they were both women. Or maybe due to her relationship with Grandma. Lena looked at Maya, whose face was slightly flushed, and hesitated before saying, "I'm honored that you chose to be a puppet master, but becoming a true puppet master requires sacrifices that are not as simple as other professions." Hearing Lena's words, Maya immediately shifted her gaze to the teacher's legs, and her face turned pale. Seeing Maya's reaction, Lena could guess what she was thinking and coldly said, "My legs are due to a childhood accident." Maya was taken aback by this, and then a hint of embarrassment appeared on her face, while secretly relieved that becoming a puppet master did not require sacrificing her legs. If it were as she imagined, she would rather not be a puppet master than end up in a wheelchair. Knowing she didn't have to sacrifice her legs, Maya finally relaxed and patted her chest, promising, "Teacher Lena, don't worry, no matter how difficult it is, I will become a puppet master." Looking at Maya's determined expression, Lena did not show any extra reaction. She knew that wanting to become a puppet master was not just a simple statement. The hardships involved could only be truly understood through experience. At the same time, she did not hold much hope for this girl in front of her, especially since the girl's appearance clearly indicated that she had been raised in privilege for years and would certainly struggle to pass the puppet master test. However, the other party was introduced by someone she knew, so she couldn't refuse directly. After hesitating for a moment, she took out a list and an old map from her pocket. This is the map of the ancient castle of Bukya. To become a puppeteer, the first step is to go here and collect the items on the list. Only by gathering all these items can you qualify to become a puppeteer. Maya stepped forward and took the map and list from Lena's hands. She instinctively glanced at the list and was immediately stunned. After a long pause, a look of difficulty appeared on her face. "What are these? I don't recognize any of them." The entire list contained nearly 50 items, including clockwork parts, broken doll limbs, fabric scraps, energy crystals. Everything was clearly written down. But no matter how clearly the list was presented, Maya knew nothing about the items on it. She didn't even know what the items on the list looked like. However, what left her feeling even more desperate was what came next. When she saw the so-called map of the ancient castle of Bukya, she was completely stunned. It's so big. She swore she had never seen a building this large in her life. Struggling to understand the map, she discovered that the entire castle had nearly 1,000 rooms. In addition to these rooms, there were also courtyards and a basement. Searching for dozens of parts in such a large castle was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Maya's reaction seemed to be anticipated by Lena, who said expressionlessly, "This is the most basic test for a puppeteer. If you can't even recognize the parts of a doll, it means you don't have the qualifications to become a puppeteer." Looking at Lena's serious and somewhat cold demeanor regarding her profession, Maya wanted to say, "Sister, I came in through the back door." However, seeing Lena's icy expression when it came to her career, she swallowed her words. Now, she was faced with only two choices. One was to withdraw from the puppeteer test, and the other was to continue. Withdraw? Clearly, she hadn't even considered that option. In terms of gaming talent, Maya might not be as skilled as other streamers. But just based on her persistence in clearing the entire city of night demons in the game, one could see her character. To put it bluntly, Maya was the type who, once she made a choice, would stubbornly stick to it without turning back. Since she had already decided to become a puppeteer, she would not give up easily, or rather, she wouldn't give up at all. Looking at the daunting map and list, Maya fell into silence for a moment before asking another concerned question. "Is there a time limit?" Hearing this, Lena looked up at Maya in surprise, a hint of appreciation flashing in her eyes, and coldly replied, "There's no deadline, but I still advise you. It's not safe there." Upon hearing that it was unsafe, Maya was once again dumbfounded. This task was already difficult enough, and now there was danger involved. Suddenly, she thought of all the players outside. There couldn't be no one going there to complete tasks. Thinking of this, she felt reassured again and said seriously, "I'm not afraid. I will definitely become a doll master." After saying this, Maya no longer hesitated and wanted to go out as soon as possible to find players to team up with. Seeing this, Lena did not stop her, put away her dolls, and turned her wheelchair to head in another direction. As it turned out, just as Maya thought. When she returned to the hall from the backyard, she heard players calling out in front of the hall. Is anyone going to the triangular plains to hunt deer? Gun task. Is anyone going to the west gate for the bird shooting task? Sword and shield? Let us head to Guerrilla Falls. The various shouts made the square in front of the professional hall especially lively. All the players held their respective professional weapons, recruiting teammates to join them. Seeing the professional weapons in the hands of the players, Maya's eyes widened in surprise, and she exclaimed, "Oh no, I forgot to get the novice weapon." Just as she was astonished and regretting, a shiny silver pendant necklace fell out of the map in her hand. Huh. Maya instinctively bent down to pick it up, and in the next second, she froze in place. Chapter 320. Deceiving. Continuing to deceive. Witch doll. A doll powered by a psychic stone, capable of mental attacks while also granting team members a frenzy aura. Is this a skill? Maya, still in the posture of picking up the pendant, never expected that this seemingly cross-shaped pendant was her professional weapon. Moreover, the moment she touched the pendant, a skill to summon a witch doll inexplicably appeared in her mind. After a moment of daze, she couldn't hold back any longer and stood up straight to instinctively try to summon it. However, insufficient materials, unable to summon. Damn it. Upon hearing the prompt, Maya couldn't help but curse. Clearly, she had learned the skill, but it couldn't be used due to lack of materials. This situation would be frustrating for anyone, but unable to summon meant just that, and with no other option. She had to take another careful look. It was then she discovered that the prerequisite for summoning a witch doll was actually needing a witch doll. Alright, this seems a bit messy. However, Maya understood that in order to summon, she needed to obtain a witch doll. But after talking with Lena, she learned that in the entire city of Otan, or even this continent, there was only one puppeteer, Lena. This meant that if she wanted to get a witch doll, aside from Lena, she would have to make one herself. Goodness, this just shows how troublesome the puppeteer profession is. However, now that she had made her choice, her heart wouldn't allow her to regret it. In the end, she decided to make a doll herself. But before that, she needed to gather parts from the backyard castle, which meant, oh no, does this mean I have to charge into the courtyard empty-handed? It was only at this moment that this slightly chubby girl with a baby face fully realized the seriousness of the situation. Other professions, even without skills, at least have professional weapons to use. And what about her? Was she supposed to take the pendant and mouth off at that so-called castle? She didn't believe that she could win over anyone with just her words, and in the end, she could only stand in the square, watching team after team of successful players leave. After observing for a while, Maya gradually noticed a phenomenon. Those players coming out of the professional hall had nothing but their professional weapons. No one had a map like hers. Seeing this, Maya's big, shiny eyes began to sparkle with clever ideas. Observing the situation, the online viewers exclaimed, "Wow, the streamer is coming up with another brilliant idea. Yes, that expression is too familiar. Someone is probably going to be in trouble again. Should we report it or not? What is the point of reporting? Isn't it better to watch the streamer dig their own grave?" Just as the viewers speculated about what Maya would do next in the game, Maya had already taken action. She walked to the most crowded area of the small square, stood on a piece of bluestone, and shouted, "Everyone, look over here. Look over here." Maya, who had never understood social anxiety, suddenly found herself the center of attention, and she didn't feel embarrassed at all. Seeing that she had attracted quite a few gazes, she confidently raised the map of the ancient castle in her hand and exclaimed, "I just triggered a hidden quest and received a treasure map. That NPC lady told me there are many pieces of equipment in this castle. However, as a girl, my stamina is limited, so I'm recruiting teammates now." Noticing the skeptical expressions among the crowd, Maya remained unfazed and added, "Of course, if you want me to team up with you, there will be a price. Once you obtain the equipment, I will take a 20 cut as a leadership fee. As the saying goes, no profit, no early riser." Upon hearing this, those players who were still harboring doubts felt reassured. In their view, this kind of arrangement was the correct approach. After all, who would willingly take you to farm for equipment without any compensation? A 20 fee didn't seem excessive, but the players still felt a bit skeptical. After all, no one was quite sure if there would actually be equipment on that map. Just because you say there's equipment, does that mean there is? Do you think we're 3-year-olds? Someone questioned. Hearing this, Maya was not surprised. In fact, she found it quite reasonable. She immediately explained, "Let us make a deal. If each person doesn't get more than 5 pieces of equipment, I won't take a single cent. If you do get more than 5, I will select one piece." Maya's words piqued the interest of those around her, and some even started to push closer from the outskirts. Seeing this, Maya felt a sense of pride swelling within her and quickly added, "However, once we get there, you must follow my instructions. We are all newcomers, and apart from the most basic weapons, we have no extra equipment. Given the opportunity to explore a new map and the chance to obtain equipment, the crowd was not too resistant to Maya's proposal and eagerly signed up. Maya's heart soared with joy. Although she had no combat power and couldn't even use any skills, she had free fighters at her disposal. Feeling pleased with herself, Maya began to select her teammates amidst the throng of people. The entire square was bustling with excitement. Meanwhile, the city guards who witnessed this scene were left dumbfounded. Some even turned to their equally stunned captain and asked, "Captain, does the equipment she mentioned really exist?" The captain, snapping out of his shock, instinctively shook his head and replied, "No, I've never heard of it. If I'm not mistaken, she must be holding that haunted castle map, right?" "The haunted castle? She can't be serious about going there, can she? Isn't that a death wish?" "Captain, before the guards could finish their words, the captain interjected. "Our duty is to maintain order, and the governor has warned us not to interfere with these adventurers." Upon hearing the captain's words, the surrounding guards immediately fell silent. However, thinking of the legend of that haunted castle still made my body shiver. Maya quickly gathered a group of like-minded friends, including him. There were a total of 5 people. A blonde girl with a trendy hairstyle named Pan Xian, wearing a cool novice leather armor, carrying a wooden shield and a short sword on her back, clearly a believer in the game. Standing next to her was a young man named Pan Hao, who resembled her quite a bit, with a dagger at his waist, yet insisted he was a healer. The other 2 were also girls. One, named Wang Meng, had a pistol at her waist. The last one, named Zhou Hong, carried a long weapon on her back that was taller than she was, looking much like those used by city guards. After everyone introduced themselves, Maya couldn't wait any longer and led the group to search for the ancient castle. Chapter 321, Journey to the Castle. The ancient castle of Bakya is located across the dim lake south of the city of Otan. It is said that this castle was built by an architect during the early days of Otan, and its owner is a mysterious and eccentric old man named Bakya. The origins of this old man are shrouded in mystery, and no one knows him. However, the people of Otan are aware that this enigmatic elder is quite wealthy. It is rumored that the castle was constructed by the old man to hide his treasures. As if to confirm the rumors, after the castle was completed, it fell silent once again. The gates of the castle courtyard remained tightly shut, and even the old man Bakya never made an appearance. It was as if he vanished right after the castle was built. Over time, the mystery surrounding the castle piqued the curiosity of some young people in Otan. Along with their curiosity, they were also drawn to the legendary treasures. As time passed, the castle showed no signs of change, and gradually began to fall into disrepair and desolation. The restless young people, upon witnessing this scene and fueled by their desire for treasure, eventually formed a group to explore the castle in search of riches. 5 young individuals, 4 men and 1 woman, entered the castle courtyard the next day. As they entered, a thick fog enveloped the entire castle, causing it to disappear from sight. This sudden turn of events took everyone by surprise and halted their exploration. However, as time passed and the fog dissipated, a shocking scene emerged before the onlookers. The 5 young people who had entered the courtyard were found leaning against the iron gate, looking extremely tragic. Seeing this, the crowd was instantly filled with panic. Just as everyone was about to flee the area, someone noticed that there was still one young person alive among them. A girl, who had lost her legs and was filled with terror, struggled to crawl out through the gap in the gate. Initially, no one dared to approach this horrifying scene. The girl, relying on sheer determination, managed to crawl out of the courtyard, but soon succumbed to her injuries and fainted from blood loss. As the crowd hesitated on whether to check on her, a man and a woman stepped forward from the group, approaching to carry the severely injured girl away from the courtyard. Everyone silently watched the unfolding events. Once the man and woman left with the girl, the crowd finally snapped out of their daze and planned to leave. At that moment, something eerie occurred again. The other 4 young people leaning against the courtyard gate gradually stood up, moving stiffly like puppets towards the castle doors. As they walked, the slowly opening doors of the castle emitted a chilling and sorrowful laughter. The haunting sound terrified the onlookers, who fled in terror towards the city of Otan. With the occurrence of this event, the haunting incident at the castle has been confirmed, turning it into a place filled with ghosts and zombies and people's rumors. Since then, no one has dared to seek whether the treasure really exists, because in their minds, the castle is a cursed place that people are reluctant to even mention. Yaya, are you kidding us? Where's the castle? Pan Hao, the only male in the team, looked at the misty surface of the lake with a hint of doubt in his eyes. Upon hearing this, Maya's brows twitched slightly, clearly indicating her displeasure at the nickname. However, knowing she was lying, she didn't get angry and looked down at the map in her hands, confirming, that's right. The map shows that the castle is right across the lake. At this moment, Zhou Hong, who was carrying a long weapon, spoke up. Although the mist is thick here, I don't think there's anything over there. The entire area of the lake was shrouded in fog, but through the thin mist, One could still vaguely see the situation across the way. The lake wasn't very large, and aside from the mist, there wasn't even a building, let alone a castle. The map can't be wrong. Perhaps it's due to the fog. Now we should think about how to get across. Although Maya couldn't see any buildings on the other side, she believed that Lena wouldn't trick her with a fake map. Since they were already here, how could they just give up without taking a look? Seeing her determined expression, the others exchanged glances and chose to trust her for the time being. Pan Xian, with a wave of her hand, signaled her brother to look for something that could help them cross the lake, which would also reduce the time for everyone to move forward. Soon, Pan Hao found a small wooden cabin not far from the shore. The cabin seemed to have been neglected for years, battered by wind and rain, with signs of insect damage everywhere. This must have been a fisherman's house, he said instinctively as he touched the weathered fishing net hanging from the eaves. As they explored, they quickly discovered a small boat covered with a tattered tarp behind the cabin. The boat was in pretty good condition. Seeing this, they immediately brought the boat to the lake. I'll row. I'm good at this. I used to do it all the time in the park. Without waiting for the others to board, Pan Hao eagerly picked up the oars to demonstrate his skills. The girls had no intention of competing for this physical task and naturally sat down in the small boat. Before long, the boat began to glide smoothly across the lake under Pan Hao's control. Xianjia, your little brother must have spent a lot of time in the park with girls. Huh, his rowing skills are impressive. As the boat drifted further from the shore and remained steady, Maya couldn't help but say to Pan Xian. Though this comment was mostly a joke, Pan Xian felt a wave of embarrassment. What the other person said wasn't wrong. Her brother was indeed good at rowing. But thinking about the reason her brother initially learned to row made her feel quite ashamed. Was it to impress girls? Some things she didn't want to talk about. However, after all, Pan Hao is her younger brother, and as his sister, she still needs to care. Haha, my uncle used to run a boat rental business in the park. He grew up there. Soaking? Maya glanced at Pan Hao, who was rowing, and felt that this soaking had many layers of meaning. However, since they were still not familiar with each other, she felt a bit shy to joke too much. While a few of them were chatting, the small boat, under the control of Pan Yang, gradually approached the opposite shore of the lake. Oh, look over there. It seems like there's something. At this moment, Zhou Hong, sitting opposite Maya, pointed in surprise behind her. Seeing this, Maya instinctively turned around to look. In the thin mist, a tall and massive shadow clearly emerged. Before everyone could be surprised, the small boat gradually approached, and that towering shadow was completely revealed to their sight. Chapter 322. Entering the courtyard, speculations, and an attack. The grayish-blue walls were covered in patches of dark green moss. Countless dense black windows resembled hollow eyes. Coupled with the dilapidated and desolate courtyard, it immediately evoked thoughts of a haunted house. Is this the ancient castle? The sight of the crumbling castle made Pan Hao, who was rowing, pause for a moment, and his face turned slightly pale. Are you scared of ghosts? After the initial surprise, Maya did not think much of it, glancing at Pan Hao, whose complexion had turned a bit pale, and scoffed. This was clearly a sign of disdain, which instantly ignited Pan Hao's inner anger, prompting him to retort, scared? I'm not afraid of anything. I've seen it all. This shabby courtyard is nothing. Even if it were the ghost castle dungeon from a survival horror game, I could handle it solo. Saying this, to prove he wasn't timid, Pan Hao jumped ashore as soon as the boat docked, putting down the oars. Idiot. Seeing her brother like this, Pan Xian rubbed her forehead and jumped off the small boat as well. Maya and the others followed suit. The usually quiet Wang Ming quietly tied the boat to a small tree on the shore. And only after finishing this did she catch up with the others as they walked towards the iron gate of the courtyard. Before long, they arrived at the iron gate of the ancient castle courtyard. The rundown, desolate courtyard was filled with yellow and green weeds, emanating a strong, earthy smell. Noticing there were no abnormalities in the courtyard, the group began to examine the iron gate closely. The black railing was rusted, especially the lower half of the gate, which showed severe rust. Is this door unlocked? Is it welded shut? To appear brave in front of the girls, Pan Hao pushed the iron gate, only to find it didn't budge at all, as if it were indeed welded shut. It's welded shut. Maya rolled her eyes at this and then ignored him, saying to Zhou Hong, your weapon is big enough. Why don't you pry it open? Zhou Hong, without hesitation, took out her long gun from behind and inserted it into the gap of the iron railing, prying it with force. As Zhou Hong exerted her strength, the iron gate trembled slightly, and Pan Hao realized that the gate was not welded shut. Rather, it had been buried partially by the ground over time. Soon, with Zhou Hong's efforts, the gap in the gate widened enough for an adult to squeeze through. Seeing this, Maya immediately stopped her. Just as Zhou Hong retracted her long gun, Pan Hao eagerly stepped forward to the enlarged gap of the iron gate, saying, I'll go first. As he was about to dive through the railing, Pan Xian, quick on her feet, yanked him back. You're such a show-off. Stop trying to impress everyone, okay? No one here wants to date you. Pan Hao felt embarrassed, wishing he could dig a hole to hide in after his sister ruthlessly exposed his feelings. However, what Pan Xian said was indeed the truth. At that moment, the girls were in no mood to think about online dating. Besides, even if they were interested, they wouldn't look at someone like Pan Hao, a high school kid. As they held back their laughter, Pan Xian boldly dashed through the fence, and seeing this, the others quickly followed. What the heck? What's going on? My goodness, this is unbelievable. Oh my, that scared me. As they entered the courtyard, the scene in Maya's livestream changed dramatically. The moment they squeezed through the fence, the dilapidated courtyard transformed instantly. The overgrown weeds disappeared, replaced by a dark courtyard illuminated by flickering lights. The entire courtyard was impeccably clean, with a black stone floor that showed not a single weed. In the center of the courtyard, there was a round water pool. Old-fashioned lanterns hung throughout the courtyard, but the corners that were not lit by the flickering lights exuded an unsettling darkness. It felt as if pairs of malicious eyes were watching them from the obscured shadows. The sudden change in environment made their hearts race. I said, are we in the wrong place? Pan Hao, feeling anxious, scanned the surroundings cautiously and spoke. It was no surprise he felt that way. Anyone would find this situation hard to believe. After all, just moments ago, they had been in bright sunlight and a rundown courtyard, and now, they found themselves in a deserted courtyard at night. The fact that they didn't scream in shock right away showed they had some courage. It must be right. The map in Maya's hand must be a dungeon map. Pan Xian speculated boldly, even thinking that the map might be the key to unlocking this dungeon. Since everyone was unfamiliar with the new version, they could only guess at this point. Hearing Pan Xian's words, the others stood still, their brows furrowed. This sudden change made them hesitant to move carelessly. After a while, Pan Xian spoke again. Now we have only two options in front of us. One is. As she spoke, she turned to look back, only to find that behind them, apart from darkness, there was nothing else. The courtyard gate they had come through had long disappeared. This phenomenon sent a shiver down her spine. Noticing Pan Xian's reaction, the others instinctively turned around to look, and when they saw the dark void behind them, they completely panicked. What should we do? Zhou Hong gripped her long gun tightly, looking terrified. Maya hadn't expected things to escalate to this point either. But for the sake of her task, she steeled herself and said, I don't know how it turned out like this, but it looks like we can only enter the castle and take a look. Hearing her words, Pan Xian nodded in response. There's no other way. Finally, she added, now we can only hope that this dungeon is friendly to new players. It should be quite friendly, right? Since the elder sister has said so, Pan Hao could only stammer in agreement. Soon, the group decided to move forward through the courtyard, intending to explore the ancient castle. However, just as they stepped out of the brightly lit center of the courtyard, a series of low growls from wild beasts suddenly echoed in the surrounding darkness. In an instant, the tension in the group reached its peak, and they gripped their weapons in vigilance. While remaining alert, they slowly made their way toward the entrance of the castle. As they moved further from the light, the growls in the darkness became more pronounced, and they could vaguely sense something moving within the shadows. Quick move. At that moment, Pan Xian seemed to see something, her pretty face turning pale as she urged everyone on. Without hesitation, the group closely followed her toward the castle's main door. Just then, a powerful growl rang out, and from the corner of their eyes, they spotted a shadow lunging toward them. Pan Xian, who was leading the way, immediately turned and raised her shield to block the side of the group. Bang! A dull thud shattered the chilling darkness. As Pan Xian stepped back, the shadow was also knocked away, landing not far from the group. With the faint light, those who caught a glimpse of the shadow couldn't help but gasp, feeling a chill rushing from their feet straight to the crown of their heads. They could never have imagined that the thing standing before them would be this. Chapter 323. Stepping into the zoo. What? Is this a husky? Nonsense. Which husky looks like this? This is clearly a wolf. Stop the chatter and hurry up. Before the few people could finish arguing, the four-legged beast slowly emerged from the shadows and let out a howl as it lunged at them. Among them, Pan Xian immediately reacted, shouting sharply as she raised her shield to confront the beast head-on. Go! Bang! With a dull thud, the fierce four-legged creature was sent flying back. Without waiting for the beast to get up, Pan Xian quickly stepped forward and swung her short sword down towards its head with great force. Thud! The short sword, seemingly ordinary, was exceptionally sharp and effortlessly split the creature's head in two. Wow, so weak. Seeing the creature that resembled a husky collapse on the ground, Pan Hao was momentarily stunned before curling his lip. He hadn't expected this thing to look so fierce, but be completely useless. However, just as everyone was thinking this, a series of low growls echoed from the darkness. With the continuous growling, more and more four-legged beasts emerged from the shadows. What? Looking at the countless pairs of malicious eyes revealing themselves from the shadows, Pan Hao couldn't help but tremble. Meanwhile, Pan Xian's expression changed dramatically, and she shouted, Quick! Retreat to the castle. Upon hearing Pan Xian's shout, The others immediately reacted, not hesitating to sprint towards the castle's entrance. Seeing this, Pan Xian didn't dare to hesitate either. She turned sideways, keeping an eye on the beasts while running at full speed. Carnivorous animals love to chase after fleeing prey. Seeing Maya and the others escape, dozens of four-legged beasts in the courtyard immediately sprang into action. Shadowy figures surged forward like vicious wolves towards the group. However, as those figures burst out of the darkness and fully emerged into the light, the group felt a chill run down their spines. Pan Hao was so scared he yelled, "Oh no, what is this? Are we in a zoo? Enough talking, run." Seeing her brother still had time to shout, Pan Xian was furious and yelled, rushing to his side and pulling him along. At that moment, she felt immense regret. Yes, regret for being foolish and coming to explore with Maya. Now, forget about equipment. They might even lose their lives here. It's over, it's over. Meanwhile, Pan Hao, being pulled by Pan Xian, had a pale face filled with despair. What is this? Tears streamed from Maya's eyes. She never dreamed that the task Lena mentioned would be so terrifying. As they glanced back, the pack of four-legged beasts was closing in, including big cats, wolves, and even a large black-maned lion. At that moment, no one had the mood to admire these exotic creatures. They could only run for their lives towards the castle entrance. Out of the corner of their eyes, they occasionally glanced at the monster behind them, wishing they had built 2 more legs during the modeling process. The only comforting factor was that the center of the courtyard was not far from the castle's entrance. However, the worrying part was that the castle door was tightly closed. As they watched the door draw closer, a mix of joy and anxiety filled their hearts. They feared that they wouldn't be able to open that door. If that were the case, they would truly be doomed. Creak. Just as they were lost in their thoughts while sprinting, a harsh metallic grinding sound echoed. Accompanied by the noise, the tightly shut castle door slowly opened a crack, revealing a faint glow from within. Run. Don't stop. The sudden turn of events made Pan Hao instinctively pause, but before she could voice her thoughts, she was tugged forward by Pan Xian, urging her to move again. Someone. At that moment, Wang Meng, at the front of the group, suddenly exclaimed. As she spoke, a figure began to emerge from within the castle. Everything continued to unfold, and as the 2 parties drew closer, the figure stepping out from the door became fully visible. It was a woman, her face seemingly smeared with a thick layer of flour. She held a candlestick with 3 candles that emitted a ghostly light. A chilling breeze swept through, causing the candles to sway precariously, the flickering light casting an even more eerie shadow on the woman's pale visage. In that instant, a chilling word flashed through everyone's mind. Ghost. They felt a wave of cold creep through their bones. Just as they froze in shock at the sudden scene, a wave of beasts surged towards them from behind. The woman with the candlestick, resembling a ghost, spoke. Get out. The pale-faced woman, with a mouth that seemed too small to produce such a sound, emitted an exceptionally piercing and sharp voice. With her command, the frenzied animals whimpered in fear as if they had encountered something terrifying, immediately retreating into the shadows with their tails between their legs. The group stood frozen in place, feeling an icy chill at this sight. At that moment, they felt no relief from their narrow escape. Instead, they were increasingly unsettled by the woman on the steps. They remained silent, with Pan Xian stepping in front of the others, raising her shield in a defensive stance. The woman stiffly turned her neck, locking her gaze on the group, and after a moment, she said, I'm sorry, it's been a long time since we've had guests at the castle. My animals are a bit skittish. If you don't mind, you are welcome to come inside and have a seat. Her words were polite, and she even extended an invitation to them. However, the rigid, emotionless tone left them feeling no warmth or friendliness. The woman with a defeated expression, after finishing her words, turned and walked into the ancient castle regardless of whether the others agreed or not. The few onlookers exchanged strange and horrified glances, each detecting hesitation in the other's eyes. However, when they turned to look back the way they came, a chill ran through them. The courtyard showed no signs of change, and the path they had taken was right in front of them. Yet, in the darkness on either side of the road, there floated pairs of green, round orbs. Some were large, some small, all as striking as the glow of fishing floats at night. After a rough count, there seemed to be hundreds of pairs. In short, they were densely packed, sending shivers down the spines of the few. Although the owners of those eyes made no move, they all understood clearly in their hearts that if they dared to turn back, they would be torn to pieces. Even with the ability to resurrect, they did not want to experience such a sensation, let alone endure the long resurrection cool-down time. Let's go in and take a look. In the end, Maya, who had a mission to complete, was the first to speak, stepping up the stairs toward the castle. The other 3, seeing this, had no choice but to follow. The only path laid out before them was this one. Chapter 324, The Silent Candleholder Woman Creek. Tap tap. As several individuals entered the ancient castle, the wooden door, filled with the scent of decay, slowly closed on its own. In an instant, the surroundings fell into an indescribable silence. Fortunately, the candlelight flickered along the stone walls of the long corridor, casting a dim light that prevented the group from being engulfed in darkness. However, the sound of their footsteps was amplified in this environment, making them increasingly cautious. A few meters ahead stood a woman with her back to them, holding a candle holder. Looking at her thin, forlorn figure, the group felt anything but reassured. Instead, an unsettling feeling grew within them. They couldn't tell whether she was human or ghost, and they leaned more towards the latter. Compared to them, the figure in front moved without making a sound. The spacious, lengthy corridor had no visible rooms, and apart from the woman leading the way, there were no other figures in sight. This situation caused the atmosphere to grow heavy and stagnant, with beads of sweat forming on their foreheads without them even realizing it. Eventually, Panhao could no longer endure the oppressive atmosphere and called out to the woman in front, "Hey, where are you taking us?" The woman did not respond, nor did she show any reaction, continuing to walk like a robot, holding the candle holder. Seeing this, Panhao immediately stopped and shouted, "Hey, hey, hey! If you don't speak, are we just leaving?" The woman seemed deaf, continuing her path without a word. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the corridor became eerie. The group halted, no longer wanting to follow the woman, and even contemplated leaving the castle. They believed that facing the outside world was better than enduring this stifling atmosphere. However, at that moment, the woman finally reacted. To the dining room. The simple 3 words came out cold, like a chilling wind from the depths of hell, causing the 3 to shiver. After speaking, the woman lifted her foot and continued forward, still making no sound. The group stood frozen in place, exchanging glances. They all knew something was off about this woman, but they had no other choice. They could either retrace their steps or follow her to the so-called dining room. The idea of harming the woman hadn't crossed their minds yet. After all, they couldn't tell if she was an NPC or a creature in the castle. Clearly, though, the woman was not unapproachable. As long as communication was possible, they could uncover the mysteries of the castle. With that thought, they decided to follow her to the dining room. Once again, they moved, keeping a safe distance behind the woman. This way, if she suddenly attacked, they would have a chance to react. Soon, while remaining vigilant, they arrived at a wooden door with the woman. She pushed it open and walked straight in. A few people followed Maya in, and in an instant, the bright light made them instinctively cover their eyes with their hands. The last one to enter was taken aback and, suppressing discomfort, lowered their arms. "I can't believe this." As Panhao's vision adjusted, he was immediately shocked by the scene before him. Ah, ah, ah. At the same time, several women's screams erupted. The ones screaming were Maya and her companions. They weren't under any attack, they were simply frightened by the scene in front of them. Meanwhile, viewers watching the live stream reacted with shock. What the heck? Is this a kitchen? It looks more like a slaughterhouse. Oh no, given this situation, the host is definitely in trouble. Who cares? In 18 years, I'll still be a good man. In contrast to the viewers casually chatting in the live stream, the 4 girls in the group were thoroughly terrified by the sight before them. Along the way, they had considered many possible outcomes. They even thought that upon entering the kitchen, they might face various attacks. In short, they had imagined all sorts of scenarios. However, they never anticipated anything like the current situation. They hadn't even entertained such thoughts prior to this moment. The girls believed that they had seen their fair share of chaos in the world of biohazard crises. They weren't particularly afraid when facing those grotesque zombies or human remains. Yet now, looking at this kitchen filled with flesh and bones, they felt utterly chilled to the bone. Standing there, it was as if they were naked on an ice field. They could never have dreamed that a kitchen could look like this. "Have you eaten?" Suddenly, a greeting rang out. What was supposed to be a normal question instantly sent chills down Maya and her companion's spines in such an environment. They instinctively looked towards the woman standing next to a wooden table. At that moment, the candlestick in her hand had been replaced with a bone-slicing knife. Yes, a bone-slicing knife, the kind used at home for chopping chicken during festive seasons, and the blade was still dripping with fresh blood. Looking at the woman holding the knife and the horrifying scene around them, the girls suddenly found that question about eating very nauseating. At that moment, even the most oblivious person could sense that something was wrong with the scene before them. The girls instinctively wanted to shake their heads, but unexpectedly, Panhao, almost as if possessed, replied, "No, we haven't eaten." As soon as the words left his mouth, he realized he had made a mistake, hurriedly waving his hands and quickly saying, "Yes, we've eaten. We're full." However, the pale-faced woman didn't listen to Panhao's explanation. She stiffly raised her arm and, with a thud, brought the knife down on a half slab of ribs in front of her. The ribs were only half a slab, and it was hard to tell whether they belonged to an animal or a human. However, judging by the large bones hanging from the ceiling, which resembled human leg bones, it was highly likely that this was a human rib. The woman's expression was numb, with no extra emotion at all, even when the knife struck, causing flesh to splatter. Her unblinking eyes showed no sign of flinching. In that moment, The few onlookers truly understood what it meant to kill without batting an eye. Whether it was fear or something else, they watched in shock as the woman continued to chop the bones in front of her. Just when they thought she would use the bones to cook, she unexpectedly took down a leg bone from the various meats hanging above her head. Without a word or any expression, she raised her bone-cutting knife and began chopping again. The bizarre atmosphere was driving them to the brink of madness. Fortunately, at that moment, Maya suddenly remembered her mission and quickly asked, "I need to find something. Do you know where the items on this list are?" As she spoke, she pulled out the list given to her by Lena and gestured for the woman to see it. However, she did not expect that when the woman mechanically looked up and saw the list, it was as if she had encountered something terrifying. With a startled cry, she brandished her knife and angrily lunged at them, shouting, "Kill!" The sharp, piercing scream instantly echoed throughout the ancient castle. Chapter 325. These women have gone mad. The pale-faced women charged like vengeful spirits from the underworld, startling several people in an instant. Fortunately, Pan Xian from the group reacted quickly, immediately drawing her sword and shield to block the attack with a loud clash. The woman in the gray long dress did not get knocked back like the previous beast, but instead held her ground against Pan Xian, bracing herself with a wooden shield. At the same time, the others finally got a clear look at the woman behind the shield. Her face was deathly pale, as if coated in a layer of flour, covered with fine, black fissures resembling a spider's web. The most horrifying aspect was her eyes. Those lifeless eyes looked like two wooden balls carved as decorations, rough and poorly crafted. Faced with such a terrifying visage, the group felt their scalps tingle. But the next moment, something even stranger happened. The woman's mouth did not open. Yet a chilling roar erupted, seemingly from the depths of hell. Die. What the hell is this? The bizarre scene made Pan Hao, who was behind Pan Xian, lose his cool. He yelled and pulled out a dagger to attack the woman. "You're a coward." Pan Xian was startled by her brother's sudden action and instinctively tried to push him away. However, it was too late, as she exerted her strength. Pan Hao's dagger had already lunged towards the woman's abdomen. Swish! The sharp, keen dagger pierced through the woman's long dress, followed by the sound of a blade entering some kind of material. This sound was completely inconsistent with piercing flesh. At that moment, Pan Hao's exclamation answered the group's confusion. What the hell? Wooden? Pan Hao couldn't believe his eyes as he stared at the long dress that had been sliced open. More precisely, it was the body of the woman inside the dress. Although the cut was not large and the light was dim, his vision allowed him to see clearly. The body was black, resembling decayed wood, embedded with various gears of different sizes. At that moment, he realized he had never before been so eager to understand a woman's body. Amidst his shouts and curiosity, he forcefully withdrew the dagger and instinctively used it to slice open the woman's long dress. He swore he had no lewd intentions. He simply wanted to understand. Swish! As he wished, the sharp dagger effortlessly tore through the long dress, exposing the black body to the others. As the long dress was ripped apart and her body revealed, the woman with the pale face seemed to be stimulated by something, letting out a sharp scream of fear and confusion. The woman, who had been resisting the force against the shield, instinctively grabbed the torn dress, attempting to cover herself. However, just then, a stronger force from the shield slammed against her, sending her flying. Seeing the woman thrown out, Maya and the others finally regained their senses. Is that a mechanical body? No, it shouldn't be. To be precise, it seems to be a decayed. At this point, Zhou stopped, as she momentarily didn't know how to describe what she saw. Just then, Wang Ming suddenly interjected. A puppet. A puppet. Her body looks like a puppet. Yes. Exactly a puppet. That's what I was trying to say. Zhou eyes lit up, and she immediately added, "Puppet?" Maya murmured upon hearing this, and it seemed she thought of something, quickly taking out the list that Lena had given her. Spring mechanism, intact doll arms, exquisite metal pieces, copper base. One by one, the items flashed before her eyes and entered her mind. It was only at this moment that she realized that the items on the list did not need to be found in the castle, but rather taken apart from the woman in front of her. Although the other party was not human, her appearance still made her hesitate. However, this hesitation did not last long, as the woman launched another attack, and Maya completely cast her doubts aside. Facing the woman's renewed assault, the group was no longer caught off guard. With Pan Xian stepping forward to block, Zhou and Wang Ming also launched their respective attacks. Zhou was a tall girl with long legs and a single ponytail, and taking advantage of her height, she leaped over Pan Xian's head. Her spear struck down towards the woman's head like lightning. At the same time, the gun in Wang Ming's hand let out a series of gunfire sounds. Although it was a gun, it produced the effect of a submachine gun. As the gun fired, black pellets shot out continuously, hitting the woman with pinpoint accuracy. Bang! Zhou spear followed closely, striking the woman's head, and in an instant, wood chips flew everywhere as the woman was sent flying back. The group did not dare to let their guard down, rushing to the fallen woman and mercilessly raising their weapons to attack her. Clang, clang. In an instant, sparks flew and wood splinters scattered. Before long, the woman in the long dress was reduced to pieces, except for Maya. Watching the woman now turned into a pile of scrap parts, Maya felt a mix of amusement and despair. Just as she was about to search for the parts listed, she suddenly felt several icy stares fixed on her. She instinctively looked up to meet their gazes, her expression instantly stiffening. I remember you said earlier that you were a puppeteer, right? Then, can you explain this to us? Pan Xian, the main force of the team, was the first to question her. Seeing this, Maya initially planned to try to defend herself, but realizing how strange everything was in this castle, she had no choice but to come clean. What is this? You said this is your job change task? Then what about the equipment you mentioned? Were they all lies? Damn, I really can't tell. You look so innocent and sweet, yet you have 1,000 tricks up your sleeve. Upon hearing that there were no actual equipment, Pan Hao couldn't help but blush and spat at Maya, his face full of indignation. Realizing she was in the wrong, Maya could only wipe her face instinctively and remain silent. Once the other person finished speaking, she finally said, I can't help it. You all saw it. This is no beginner task. After a pause, she added, if you want to leave now, go ahead. I'll figure out this task on my own. Easy for you to say, but those beasts outside are watching us closely. Where are we supposed to go? Pan Hao shouted angrily, then turned to his sister and said, Sis, how about we just leave her here and figure it out ourselves? Before he could finish, Zhou Hong suddenly interrupted. What about your map? And the task item list? Hearing this, Maya hesitated for a moment before taking out the map and the list and handing them to Zhou Hong. Zhou Hong took them and began to examine them closely. While the others were confused, Zhou Hong returned the map to Maya and said, I'll help you with this task. Maya looked at Zhou Hong in surprise, and before she could express her gratitude, Wang Ming chimed in, I'll help you too. Pan Hao stared wide-eyed at the two girls. What the heck? Are you two out of your minds? In this situation, you still want to. However, before he could finish, his sister said, I'll stay and help you as well. Are you kidding me? This is crazy.